What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Refinement. In today's video, I'm going to talk about getting offered a $500,000 line of credit from my bank and how I plan to use it. So please smash the like button, consider subscribing. We'll see you guys inside. A lot of resellers are trying to grow their business, expand, and so they often look for ways to get financing. Either they use a credit card or a loan from a friend, or maybe they have some savings. In this scenario, I got offered a $500,000 line of credit from my bank, and what triggered it was I actually opened a new credit card. And so about once per year, I get a new credit card. I have 8 credit cards now, and I do that because I'm a fan of doing credit card churning for fun to get points. And it is kind of silly to do at this point because I feel like the time that I spend trying to do these programs could be better spent just working on my business. But at this point, I just use 2 credit cards, even though I have 8, one for my business and one for my personal. And in today's video, I want to talk about the difference between pulling a credit card using your own social security card or social security number, or pulling one with your FEIN through your company. And in this scenario, it pulls your personal credit and your business credit. But when you actually get a credit card, it doesn't affect your personal credit. So this is interesting. The $500,000 line of credit that I got offered from my bank does not go on my social security number under my own credit. It would be my business's credit and not me, and would be separate. And actually, I would not be personally liable for that loan. So it's kind of interesting, but I'm going to talk about how to safely use financing because a lot of people want to grow as fast as possible, but I feel like that's very dangerous. I want to go over some safety precautions here. And that brings us to our sponsor today, which is Aura. Aura is a really cool company. I've been working with them for a while. Essentially, I use them for 3 purposes. One, to manage my social security number in case somebody's trying to open a new card. I got an email when I applied for this new Chase card, and I look at my credit card balances in my bank account, which is monitored, and then also my passwords. So those are the 3 things I use this service for. And it was really nice getting an email because somebody pulled my credit. So if somebody is stealing your identity, you'll know right away. That credit card, I don't plan on using at all. I'm just using it for the sign-up bonus. Once I get the sign-up bonus, I'll do like the rest of my cards and not use it at all. I do have a little bit of a write-up on my website, dailyrefinement.com, on which credit cards I use and why to use them, but I recommend 1 for business, 1 for personal. Keep it simple. Even though I have all these cards, I actually don't use the card that gets the most points in each category. I feel like that's a waste of time. And at the end of the year, when you're doing your taxes, it really sucks having to consolidate and manage all these different credit cards. It's just easier to just do 1 credit card. Plus, most credit card companies will send you a summary of your spending every single month. And I personally do all my numbers once a month so that at the end of the year, my taxes only takes about an hour. So it's important to stay ahead of the game, be super prepared. But I'm going to talk about what I plan on doing with this money and what you could do if you come into some extra cash or a loan from a friend or family member, or you want to dip into your savings. The best way to use that capital, we'll go over that in today's video. All right, guys. So there's essentially 5 different things you could spend money on in your business. And how I'm going to use my $500,000 line of credit is to not use it at all. I don't recommend you use money to grow a resale business in particular, because this type of business, you benefit a lot from starting with nothing. So start around the house, sell things that you own, use that money to purchase your first inventory. I think number 1, above all else, what people use financing for is to buy inventory. I think it gets you into trouble though, because it makes you lazy. If you buy a pallet or a truckload of something, you're not looking through every single item individually. I'm even guilty of that. What I'm doing when I'm looking at manifests is looking for, let's say, maybe 20% of the inventory I can sell that will pay for the entire lot, and the rest of it I just get to sell for free. That way I don't feel bad if I have to donate or get rid of a bunch of inventory because I've already made my money on, let's say, 20% of it. That is an also good strategy when you're thrifting, to maybe buy 10 items and have 1 or 2 items pay for the entire lot. So you're working with house money the rest of the time. I definitely do not recommend borrowing money to buy inventory. It's super duper duper risky. The only scenario where it's not that risky is if you already are flipping it to somebody else and you already have that buyer lined up. So as an example, maybe you're buying a $2,000 lot, but you know someone that would pay $2,500 for it. You buy a $2,000 lot after you've already talked to the person that's going to buy it for $2,500. You buy it, transfer to that other person, make your $500. You already know who the final customer is. That's the same scenario when you're buying items 1 by 1, but you can be a lot pickier when you're buying 1 item. And speaking from experience in wholesale and retail, when you're wholesaling, you want to combine a really great item with an average item to move 2 at once. You never need any help buying or selling the really, really nice items. It's always the average product that's difficult. And I use that same strategy when looking for a person to source items to me. I'm looking at what inventory they don't particularly like to sell, and I'm grouping that in in order to get a better deal on the things that I am looking for. So the first thing people use money for is to buy inventory. When I go to eBay Open or go to bigger events, I meet people who have lines of credit that are sort of like maxed out. Like they've spent $50,000 to $100,000 on inventory and they're just cycling through that and making the minimum payment. I don't recommend doing that because you're paying interest on that. So if you're using a credit card and paying 17 to 20%, that's already really hard to do just in general, let alone on top. So if you're buying $1,000 and you got to pay back $1,200, it's sometimes hard to make $200 profit on a $1,000 investment. You're already just breaking even on that investment. So I recommend do not borrow money to pay for inventory, especially not credit cards. The next one, which I do think does make sense, is a bigger space. So if you can't fit everything at home, it does make sense, in my opinion, to pay a few $100 for an external storage unit. I think that your storage unit should be safely 1 to 5% of your total revenue. So if you're making $5,000 a month, maybe it's worth it to get a $100 storage unit somewhere. It's not going to affect you too much. Once your storage unit starts being really expensive, then you're in trouble. And obviously the nicer storage units with power, or you're getting a small warehouse, those come with more utilities, more expenses, and it's a lot of pressure. For me, I have 3,100 square feet. It costs like $6,000 a month to run it. It's pretty expensive, so there's a lot of pressure on me to make it work. So I recommend staying at home as long as possible. And if you are making a significant amount of money, sure, invest into a bigger space. I'd rather you have more space than more inventory personally, because if you have a lot of stuff in a cramped area, you can't really see it. So if you have a little bit more space, you can spread it out. I feel like the listing process and the sorting process is a little bit easier. Next could be staff, or let's say you need help and you want to get a mentorship. We have a Facebook group where you can come figure out some more information, talk to like-minded people. But most of the time, people who are just starting, you don't need a service. Don't use any listing tools. Don't use any virtual assistants. Don't use people to help you because you're a beginner. Essentially, when you're entry level anything, if you're entry level at McDonald's, you can't hire someone to help you work the cashier. That's already the lowest position. So in the beginning, you don't want to be a manager and a beginner at the same time. You don't know how to manage quality. So somebody could be listing crap into your store and you're paying them $2 a listing. You don't even know those listings are bad. Those listings may never sell. You don't even have money to begin with. No experience, no money. Don't borrow money to hire somebody to help you. That's really very, very disastrous. I don't even recommend that. If you have a full-time job subsidizing it, don't pay that extra person to help you in the beginning because you don't know what you're doing. So don't borrow money for extra help. If you do want some mentorship, I think the main point of that is just accountability. You want to find somebody that you can talk to every day or every week and say, are you doing the work you're supposed to do? That's the valuable part. The knowledge is free. Most of the information is on YouTube for free. You don't need to pay. In fact, looking it up manually is what we teach you in the group. Like, make sure you learn how to look up comps. Make sure you look up how to research a specific product. We go over, as an example, Tech and Sports recommends this guide that he has on Hawaiian shirts. If you read through that guide, you're like a 50% expert in Hawaiian shirts just from reading that guide, and the guide is free. So essentially, educate yourself and surround yourself with people. That can sometimes cost money, but it's cheaper, in my opinion, to pay somebody for their time than to go to a networking event and share it with 50 other people. So let's say you're flying across the country to meet somebody. There's 200 people trying to meet that person. You get to spend 5 minutes with them. It costs you $2,000. That doesn't make sense. I'd rather pay them $500 for 1 hour of their time and get their undivided attention. So if you are going to spend money for mentorship, find somebody who's doing exactly what you're wanting to do. And a consultant's going to cost between $200 and $500 an hour. And normally, if you ask them a couple of questions like me, if you were to email me at chris@dailyrefinement.com, most of the time I'm just going to answer your question for free. So be careful who you're talking to, and just make sure that when you're seeking advice, that is a good use of money, but it's only a few $100s in the grand scope of things. Don't borrow like $20,000 for an expensive coaching program. You don't need that. You just need specific advice for your specific situation, and that's only going to cost a couple $100. Please don't sink $20,000 into an Amazon automation course. That doesn't really work, and it's fake, and the people who are running those Amazon automation courses are being sued because they can't do all the work for you. That sounds great, but it's too good to be true. You could borrow money to buy bulk supplies. I also don't recommend doing this because supplies are not that expensive. So I would recommend you just have about 1 or 2 months worth of supplies. It's only going to cost you a couple of $100 and just re-up. It doesn't make sense for me to spend 10 times as much for 10 times as many supplies to save a couple cents, because it's going to be taking up space all year long. I just try to keep my inventory and supplies on a 2-month recurring. That way I don't waste a whole bunch of space. And then finally is like just some administrative stuff like insurance, utilities, maybe hiring an accountant for the first time. This is going to be a few $100. Again, I don't recommend borrowing money for this. If you don't have a few $100s to set up your company, if that's what you want, I don't recommend starting a business at all. Just do it under your social security number as a sole proprietor. It is free. You don't need the... In California, it costs $800 to have a corporation. There's no reason to take on that expense. You can just use your social security number, file a Schedule C on your taxes for free. So make a couple $100, report it under your Schedule C. You can literally learn how to do that on YouTube in 5 minutes for free, or you can use the irs.gov website and the government will teach you how to do your taxes for free. That's amazing. They're very useful. You can also call the IRS hotline and they will show you what to do. So it is kind of tempting when you get a line of credit or a new credit card to go crazy, but from my experience, I don't want to overcomplicate my business, and I don't know even how I would spend even $10,000 in my business, because if I got a bigger space, I wouldn't know how to use it. If I bought larger amounts of inventory, I wouldn't know how to process it. The main key is to think about how many items can I list per week. That's your listing capacity, and to make sure your account health and your business security is on point. And that brings us back to our sponsor, Aura. It's really, really important to get security against all of your assets, because if your identity gets stolen, it's going to waste like up to a month or a year of your time fixing that. So Aura is $12 a month. You can try a 2-week trial with my link below in the description. Try out the service, see if it makes sense for you to keep your credit monitoring on point. They offer up to $1 million in fraud and liability insurance. So I feel like for $12 a month, it's a pretty good deal. Especially if you start doing some YouTube and some online marketing, you're more at risk in people stealing your identity like myself. So I've been hacked before and it's not a pleasant situation. So I recommend you protect yourself, protect your account health and your financial health. It's #1 priority for you. So appreciate you guys. Until next time, make progress daily.